Whispers before sleep. Every night, Sam lay in bed, staring at the darkened corner of his room. A tall shadow stood there, unmoving, watching. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, until he saw it move. A slight tilt of the head. A slow, deliberate step forward. He buried himself under the covers, heart pounding. When he finally peeked out, the figure was gone. But the whisper that followed made his blood freeze. Not yet, but soon. Sam didn't sleep that night. He stared at the corner, his blankets pulled up to his chin. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, just as exhaustion took hold, he swore he saw something shift in the darkness again, just for a second. A single, pale hand emerging from the black, reaching toward him before retreating. And then came the whisper again. This time, closer. Almost time. Rachel hated how her bed creaked when she moved, but tonight, the sound came even when she was perfectly still. She held her breath. A faint scraping, like fingernails dragging across wood, came from underneath. She told herself it was nothing, until she heard breathing. Slow, ragged, right beneath her. She lay frozen, muscles locked in fear. Then, slowly, she pulled her feet up, curling into herself. The breathing grew louder, wheezing, wet. A quiet knock came from underneath. 3 soft taps against the wood. Then a voice, barely above a whisper, rasped. I know you're awake. Rachel clenched her eyes shut. The bed shifted, something moved underneath her. Then, a weight pressed against the mattress, as if something was crawling up from below. She screamed and jumped off the bed, flicking on the lights. Nothing. But as she turned back to her bed, the sheet draped over the edge lifted slightly, just for a second, before dropping back down. Something was still there. Waiting. David avoided looking into mirrors at night. He didn't know why, but something about them unsettled him. One night, he couldn't resist. He stared into his reflection, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then it did. His reflection smiled. But David hadn't moved. The grin stretched wider, impossibly so, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. Then his reflection whispered. Come closer, let me out. David stumbled backward. His reflection remained frozen, still grinning. Then, slowly, the figure in the mirror stepped forward, yet David hadn't moved. The version of him inside the mirror was getting closer to the glass, pressing its hands against it, as if trying to break through. David turned and ran from the room. But when he passed another mirror in the hallway, his reflection was already there. Waiting. Ellie's bedroom door never stayed shut. No matter how many times she locked it, she'd wake up to find it slightly ajar. One night, determined to prove to herself it was just her imagination, she placed a chair against the door before sleeping. At 3:12 a.m., she woke to a soft click. The chair scraped against the floor. The door slowly creaked open. Something unseen breathed inside her room. And then, footsteps. Soft at first. Then closer. Ellie squeezed her eyes shut. The air felt heavy, suffocating. Then she heard it, a whisper right beside her bed. Let me in. Ellie's body stiffened. She could feel something standing there. Waiting. The door had never been about keeping something out. It was about keeping something in. And now, it was free. Jason hated his closet. Even during the day, he kept it shut tight. But at night, he heard it whisper. Faint murmurs, too low to make out, but they never stopped. One night, he decided to confront it. He flung the door open. Empty. He sighed in relief, until a cold breath brushed against his ear. The whispers were behind him now. Jason turned, but no one was there. The air felt heavy, damp. Then, from the darkness inside the closet, the whisper grew louder. You shouldn't have opened it. Jason staggered backward. The closet door creaked on its own, beginning to close. And just before it shut completely, he saw them. Hands. Pale and clawed, reaching from within the void. The door slammed shut. The whispers turned into laughter. Lena was paralyzed with fear. She had woken up to find her blanket slowly being pulled away. She yanked it back, but the tugging continued, gentle but insistent. Then she felt them, cold, bony fingers brushing against her ankle. She screamed and kicked, scrambling for the light. The second the room was illuminated, nothing was there. Her heart pounded. Maybe it had been a dream. But then, she saw the prints. Long, clawed handprints streaked across the blanket. They started at the foot of her bed and led to the floor. She looked down. Beneath the bed, peeking out, were two pale fingers. Motionless. Then they twitched. A whisper slithered into the room. You can't see me, but I can see you. Derek's mother always kissed him goodnight. Even after she passed away, he sometimes felt a phantom warmth on his forehead, as if she were still there. It comforted him, until one night, when he felt it again. Then his phone buzzed. A new message from his father. Coming home late tonight. Lock the doors. Mom's been gone for years, son. His heart stopped. Because the warmth was still there. A breath, soft and cold, brushed against his ear. Good night, my love. Then something grabbed his wrist. Cold fingers, strong and unrelenting. Derek's scream caught in his throat as the invisible force yanked him toward the darkness. His phone slipped from his grasp, the screen still glowing. The last thing he saw before he was pulled into the abyss was his own reflection in the phone screen. And it was smiling. The Midnight Visitor. Emily had always been a light sleeper, but lately, she had been waking up at exactly 3 a.m. each night. At first, she dismissed it as stress, maybe the result of too much coffee or scrolling through horror stories on her phone before bed. But then the knocking started. The first time, it was faint. Just 3 soft taps on her bedroom door. Tap. 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 She sat up in bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room was silent except for the sound of her own breathing. Was it the pipes? The wind? She lived alone in a small apartment, and her door was always locked. No one else had a key. The second night, it was louder. More forceful. Tap. 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 Emily turned on her bedside lamp, staring at the door. Her phone's clock read 3 a.m. sharp. She swallowed the lump in her throat and whispered, "Who's there?" No response. Just silence. She didn't dare move, didn't even get out of bed to check. Instead, she buried herself under the blankets, telling herself it was nothing. Just her imagination. By the third night, she was already awake, waiting. And when the knocking came, she finally got the courage to whisper, "Who are you?" This time, the answer came. A slow creak echoed through the room as the door opened just an inch. A cold breeze slithered inside, bringing with it the faintest whisper of laughter. Emily couldn't breathe. She wasn't alone. The next night, Emily prepared. She placed a heavy wooden chair against the door before going to bed, pushing it firmly into place. If the knocking happened again, she'd know she wasn't imagining things. By 2:50 a.m., she was already awake, staring at the door. The room was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the knocking came. Tap. 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 Emily's breath hitched. She gripped the blanket tightly, her fingers trembling. This time, she didn't answer. She just watched. The chair remained still, blocking the door. But then, shadows began to move. Long, distorted, twisting shape stretched beneath the door, writhing like smoke, shifting unnaturally. The hallway light was off. There shouldn't have been a shadow at all. Her stomach twisted into knots as the shadows began to crawl up the door. Her phone lay beside her pillow. Slowly, she reached for it, her fingers icy with fear. She turned on the flashlight, aiming it at the door. The shadows didn't disappear. Instead, they pulled back, like something was retreating from the light. A whisper seeped through the door, curling through the air like poisoned breath. "Let me in." Emily choked on a scream. She grabbed her pillow and threw it at the door. The second it hit, the knocking stopped. The shadows vanished. And the room was silent again. But she knew this wasn't over. Emily refused to be gaslit by her own fears. She needed proof. The next morning, she bought a small security camera and set it up on her nightstand, facing the door. If something, or someone, was knocking at 3 a.m., she'd catch it on video. That night, she lay in bed, phone in hand, watching the live feed. The door was closed. The chair was still in place. Her heart pounded as the clock struck 3 a.m. The knocking came. Tap. 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 Emily sucked in a sharp breath, watching the screen. The hallway outside her room remained empty. There was nothing on the camera. But the knocking continued. Then, the screen glitched, a flicker of static. And for a brief moment, something appeared. A pair of black, hollow eyes stared directly into the camera. The feed cut to black. Emily dropped her phone, her entire body shaking. When she reached for it again, the camera feed had returned. The door was still closed. The chair was still in place. But she knew what she saw. Something was watching her. Emily refused to sleep in her apartment that night. She packed a small bag and stayed at her friend Mike's place. At exactly 3 a.m., her phone vibrated. It was a motion detection alert from her bedroom camera. Her heart nearly stopped. She tapped the notification, opening the app. The camera feed was black at first, then, slowly, the image came into focus. Her bed. Something was lying in it. Her stomach turned as she looked closer. It wasn't just anything, it was her. A figure with her exact face was curled under the blankets, smiling. Emily dropped her phone and screamed. Mike jolted awake. What happened? She couldn't speak. She could only point at the phone, her hands shaking violently. Mike picked it up and stared at the screen. But when he looked, the bed was empty. The next morning, Emily returned home with Mike by her side. Everything looked normal. The chair was still against the door. The bed was neatly made. Nothing seemed out of place. Maybe it's over, Mike suggested. Maybe it was just stress. Emily wasn't convinced. They checked the security footage together. At first, it was normal. Then, at 3 a.m., the door opened on its own. A shadow slipped inside. And then, it vanished. Mike exhaled. Maybe it left. That night, Emily tried to sleep, clinging to that hope. Until 3 a.m. Tap. 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 Her entire body went cold. Slowly, she turned toward the door. And then she heard it. The whisper. I found you. The door creaked open. And this time, something stepped inside.